What is fate? What does it mean to face the inevitable? How an inevitable is something that is given the description of inevitable. When we look at theater, we generally turn towards the Greeks, whose stories of tragedy dealt with fate, but the one tragedy involved with answering those questions, like can one change their fate, is Oedipus the King by Sophocles. Now, I could go into the philosophy of free will versus fate, or lack of free will, if you don't like the word fate, and then go into the biology of electrochemicals, determining what you do, or something like that. I do not, however, have enough knowledge to access that topic. I would, however, like to talk about how fate versus free will questions appear in media, particularly the fighting against your fate. And by media, I mean anime. Mainly, anime. So, the two animes I want to talk about are JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 Vento Aurore, written by Araki, anime produced by David Productions, and Gurren Toppa Logon, animated by Studio Gainax. Spoiler warning for both of these animes. These two are interesting because it involves the characters fighting directly against their fate. This fight against fate makes up the whole anime, which is vital because most animes do have the fighting against one's fate, but this generally ends after the first episode. See My Hero Academia, Black Clover, and Naruto. Which, My Hero ends when Deku gets his powers, Black Clover ends when Screaming Guy gets swords, Naruto ends at the end of the episode when Naruto fails to realize he's actually a god. Not to say that these animes are bad, but they want to give the feeling of the underdog, the surprise hero. They want that character added to their main character. Which is fine. These animes are fine. But not what we have here. In both of these animes, the heroes are seen as foolish for even attempting what they do. Brave and heroic, sure, but doomed and idiotic. In Gurren Lagann, Simon and team are going against their fate to be stuck underground in a fight against Lord Genome, who is the force of fate keeping them down. Literally. Simon also goes against his own fate of being nothing more than just a driller. Later, they fight against the destruction of the Earth, brought on by the anti-spirals, with the anti-spirals becoming the literal representation of fate itself. While in JoJo's, Bruno Bucciardi and his gang oppose the boss, who considers himself to be chosen by fate and shapes the life of all those under his thumb. Bucciardi and his gang fight against both the boss and the gang the boss leads. The boss is the gang. He is the city. And he is called the boss because nobody knows his name or who he is. While from the surface these may just appear as uphill fights, a conflict that is supposed to appear overwhelming for the dramatic purpose of characters overcoming a great foe, this misses the theming of these shows. Gurren Lagann very often even points this out. これは運命と戦い続ける男の物語. While JoJo's is a little more subtle with its theme, as all the characters in JoJo Part 5 have a past that they would like to escape or change, a fate that has trapped them, chained them. This theme is more apparent with Giorno, Bucciardi, and the boss, as both Giorno and Bucciardi use experience to attempt to change their own fate and become gangstars, while the boss tries to surpass fate by skipping to the beneficial points in time and hiding from his past. In the time of the Greeks, these characters would be doomed to their fate, but now they overcome it. The characters in both these animes win against their villains and overcome their fate. So, what has changed? Has something changed? The answer is nothing has changed. Well, at least not drastically. Gurren Lagann is a story about how fate is bullshit, not about overcoming your fate. To overcome your fate, there has to be such a thing as fate. Gurren Lagann instead proposes that there isn't such a thing as fate, but instead everyone must act according to their own free will. The reasoning Gurren Lagann presents to support this thesis greatly comes from Aristotle's De Interpretations. To explain Aristotle's argument, he points out a simple logical idea. Statement 1, X will occur. The spirals will destroy the universe. Statement 2, X will not occur. The spirals will not destroy the universe. It is this logic that King Lord Genome uses to justify his actions. The anti-spirals will destroy the Earth. The anti-spirals will not destroy the Earth. This argument points to fate as things are already determined. Since both statements cannot be true, then one must be true. Therefore, the anti-spirals will destroy the Earth, or they will not. The spirals will destroy the universe, or they will not. Meaning, things will happen one of these ways. Your path is already determined. Your fate is already determined. There can be no free will due to things already being determined. You can't make a choice here. There's already one thing's going to happen one way or the other. Aristotle argues against this, pointing out that things aren't decided just because of necessity. While either statement 1 or statement 2 must be true, that doesn't mean it is necessarily going to happen one way or another. In the case of Team Toppa Gurren Lagann, both Lord Tremere and the anti-spirals get in the way of Team Gurren Lagann to make sure that statement 2 will be true, and ensure that statement 1 will not occur. The anti-spirals and Lord Tremere's mistake is that they believe that if Team Gurren Lagann succeeds, then statement 1 must occur, but they forget that statement 1 is not necessary in any way. That until statement 1 becomes true, it cannot necessarily be completely true, nor can statement 2. This is also known as the false dichotomy. You're either with me or you're against me. Well, that's not to say that there isn't another path in which I'm neither for you or against you. While in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Bucciardi's gang does overcome their nemesis and seemingly manages to fight against their fate, until Sleeping Slaves reveals that there was no escaping their fate to begin with. Bucciardi was fated to die. By fighting against this fate, all it added was Abbacchio and Narancia dying too. Bucciardi was always going to die, and there was no denying that fate. But in fighting against their fate, Giorno overcomes the boss and becomes the new head of Passione, and being chosen by fate. Only one with such resolve could ever hope to make even a ripple to show humanity's ability to make bends or ripples in fate, to make a more positive direction possible against all odds.
どうするそいつを去ってしまった者たちから受け継いだ者はさらに先に進めなくてはならないこの矢は破壊しない
This leads to a complication, though. When opposed to Aristotle's beliefs especially, Aristotle and Gurren Lagann's point to fate is not being a thing at all. There is no fate, just what you can do to affect the outcome. But no single outcome is predetermined. All that is important is your action. Aristotle even points out this to be necessary, otherwise nobody can be held accountable for their actions. Quote, Consequently, there will be no need to deliberate nor to take pains about something, as though if we were to do this, such things would follow, and if we were not to do this, it would not follow. Aristotle's The Interpretations. Yet Jojo comes over here and says, nah, fuck that old man. Outcomes are predetermined, but your actions leading to these outcomes matter. The survivors must move on. The boss isn't forgivable because his fate was destined. His actions to try and avoid his fate were atrocious. Jojo argues that while the outcome is inevitable, the reaction and the actions taken to the fated outcome are far more important.
彼らの苦難がどこかの誰かに希望として伝わっていくような大いなる意味となる始まりなのかもしれない。無事を祈ってはやれないが、彼らが眠れる奴隷であることを祈ろう。目覚めることで何か意味のあることを切り開いていく眠れる奴隷であることを。
Now you might be thinking, now wait a minute. Didn't you say that there were no new changes in literature's interpretation of free will versus fate? There are no old-timey literature that could be tied to such a new idea as fate being real, but the resolve to move, to change fate being important, right? Well, while 1912 might not be as old as ancient Greece, it still is different from modern literature, though its influences still thrive. We're going to talk about Edward John Morton Drax Plunkett, 18th Baron of Dunsany, or Lord Dunsany. This badass, who is responsible for all modern fantasy. Tolkien copied him. The Silmarillion uses gods to sing the world into existence. It's almost a direct copy from Dunsany's Gods of Pegana. H.P. Lovecraft lamented that he could only write like Dunsany or Poe, but didn't know how to write like Lovecraft. Dunsany was such a legendary gamer that not only was he able to tie Jose Raul Capablanca and a chess master in chess and created his own variant of chess, as well as being a top pistol marksman in Ireland, this legendary gamer wrote a short story. Okay, so he wrote many short stories, and the one we are talking about comes from just one collection of his short stories, A Dreamer's Tale. This short story is called Carcassonne. If you haven't read or heard this story, search up Carcassonne, Lord Dunsany, and read the PDF or listen to it on YouTube somewhere. Just do that very quickly. It's maybe 30 minutes long to listen to, probably shorter to read if you're very good at reading. Just go do that quickly, I'll wait. So I hope you enjoyed Carcassonne. It's pretty much the reason I made this video. I was basically talking about other things so I could tie Carcassonne in somehow. So I hope you enjoyed that. Carcassonne is about King Camarok and his court, and their search for the mythical land of Carcassonne. They are led by his minstrel, Arleon, whose music was so captivating and so magical that it was capable of giving them strength to do the impossible, and was able to lead the best paths for King Camarok in his storied lore. They head towards Carcassonne after being told that they will never make it to Carcassonne by a representative of fate. But King Camarok does not fear fate, nor does he care for it. Upon hearing from Arlon the glories of Carcassonne, King Camarok decides that he will go there despite the callings of fate, later going as far to declare war on fate itself, and all of his men following him on this war. They never make it to Carcassonne. Why was this written, though? To show the inevitability of fate? To show the uselessness of challenging fate? Well, no. As Lord Dunsady writes in Carcassonne, neither was any trophy displayed of Camaroc's 70 battles, for these were as nothing to his warriors, or him, compared with those that their youth had dreamed, and which they mightly proposed yet to do. It seems that Dunsany wrote that of all the things Camaroc's had accomplished already, nothing was as important as his search for Carcassonne, doomed or not. I wonder if Araki has read Lord Dunsany's Carcassonne. And yet we still go back to the Greeks. Though we can turn back to Oedipus the king, because Oedipus is less driven by fate, as I may have first made it seem. As pointed out by Anne Ward, in this process of self-discovery, Oedipus exercises a rational free will. He is responsible for pursuing the truth that will expose him as a patricide and committer of incest. Oedipus is not bound by fate on how he handles what he is doomed to. Oedipus could have chosen to be resigned to the idea of finding out who had doomed thieves. He could have stopped investigating the murder of the previous king of thieves at any point when he became a suspect, after sending a messenger, when his adopted father died, when Jocasta asked him to. But he doesn't. He acts because he is the hero, not because it's for the best thing for him to do. This is what makes the Greek hero of a tragedy. They act. King Camarok could have easily responded to his fate by deciding that Carcassonne wasn't worth going after anyway. Many of his men do in the story. Bucciardi could have decided, screw it, Giorno isn't worth going after the boss, or that he was just going to die when he was supposed to instead of holding on with his resolve long after his body had died. In conclusion, the questions about fate still linger, and we still strive to answer them. For as long as we have the resolve, as long as we have the choice, we should strive to answer them. I would also like to point out how interesting it was to discover the Greek tragic hero still so close to media, even when many believe society has long moved away from that tradition. Alright, that concludes this video. If you liked it, please subscribe. If you like the music, go to Trogdor. His link's in the description. Most of the music was his. Some of the music was from another YouTube site. That's also in the description. If you're wondering where I got some of this information, some of the articles are also in the description. All sources should be there. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day.